things look like they're working. That's nice. Alright, last time I tried doing puppet stream. Cool, let's do the loading screen just while I set up. Nope, there we go. Last time I tried doing a puppet stream, my connection was pretty terrible. I barely got 6 minutes worth. So I am happy to see things look like they're working this time around. Just give me one moment and we'll be ready to go. Alright, we'll get started in just a moment. So last time I tried doing a puppet stream. So I have studied puppets. I've done different types of puppets, and my favorite style, genre, I guess so to speak, of puppets is shadow puppets. So I, now that my internet's working today, would like to do a shadow puppet piece. And there are some basic ones. I hope these are popular enough that I'll be inspired to do more of these in future. You could do some basic puppets, like you cut out a shape you want and then just glue it on a stick or tape it on a stick. So here's Z's. It was for a shadow piece I did where characters were sleeping and I kind of had it hovering over their head as they were asleep. You could do like a rabbit. I cut out some paper just to briefly show, I mean, just how basic you can be. I'm starting to worry. I already made a piece to do today that I think is going to be a little complicated. But for example, maybe we just want a chubby bunny. There's our chubby bunny. We could easily, with scissors, I'm using an X-Acto knife just because I didn't grab my scissors to take with me. But whether you have scissors or an X-Acto knife, you could do something as simple as this. Let's cut out our eye first. Here's our eye. This is not the piece I plan to stream. This is just a little warm-up to show what you could do at home with maybe you got kiddos and you want to do a nice, easy shadow puppet with your kiddos. You can just carve out the basic shape of a rabbit with scissors or an X-Acto knife. If they're little kiddos, maybe don't give them the X-Acto knife. Maybe teach them to be safe with scissors first. And here's our shape. I hope you can see it. Looking at my camera, I think you can see it. And this was a bit rushed, I will admit. But kind of punch it out. There you go. You got a rabbit. Let's say you got a stick. Sometimes I even use straws, actually. You can just glue it, tape it on a stick, and then you got a little rabbit to bounce around. And there's a little tiny puppet we just made right now. Again, this is just a rushed example. The one I plan to do today is actually an OC of a friend of mine. I wanted to surprise them. I actually told them that I do this kind of puppetry. So for those new to my streams, I usually do visual novels. My name's Quetzal. I'm a Quetzal. That's me on the side here. Just, I have an avatar, but I feel for art streams, avatars get distracting. So I'm Quetzal, the little Quetzal chilling on the left. And the shadow puppet pieces I tend to do are little cutouts like this, but recently I've been getting more into the style of having a sheet and I carve out the main features of the figure. So again, this is an OC of a friend of mine. I want to show this as an example. I realize I chose a kind of complicated one to focus on today. But let's get started with this for today. So besides cutting out pieces you want, if you have a figure, an image you want, what I often do is I hold up a piece of paper to my computer screen, and through the screen I trace the main features. So that already reduces down the amount of detail. So now even further, we're gonna choose the main details to cut out to like capture the image, but we're not necessarily cutting anything out. So we'll cut, for example, that line. Now we're not gonna cut this entire line or else the puppet falls apart. But maybe this curve, this tip, the tips of the hair, maybe the rim of the ear. So we're just choosing lines really to cut out. So again, what are the most basic lines we can shine light through so that the viewers can tell what the puppet is? Basically, we want to give the viewers enough information that they can tell what they're looking at. But they don't need to see every single line. We don't need to give them too much information and also risk our puppet falling apart. Now I am cutting holes out though, because it is kind of fun to have light shine through, and the hair does some funky stuff here. So we can cut these out. I hope this works. Again, I chose a rather complicated puppet to do for this stream example. Some more lines of the hair. Oh my god, this hair. Oh boy, this is I really like the hair, but there's a lot of hair curves going on. Alright, let's do this. Oh my god, the hair's all over the place. And we'll cut that out too. Actually, I don't know if I need to cut that one out. Okay. Curves on the chest. This is where the clothes kind of break. Let's see. And some folds of the skirt. I like that fold there too. So let's see. Collarbone. I'll do little holes for the buttons. Oh boy, there's a lot of lines here. Oh man, the face. I haven't even done the face yet. Alright, let's see here. We don't want to cut too much too close to each other. Again, lest we risk cutting out pieces. Let's do that curve. I wanted to cut out, so what I sometimes do is I'll add cellophane to add color. I wanted to do that to the nails, but I think they might be too tiny. Okay, I say that, and yet, now that I look at it, I think I might get away with it. Okay, I think we can get away with it actually. Just doing some lines for the hand. It's a funky looking hand that we got going. Let's round some of that. That hand might come out funky, but that's okay. Okay, now the face. Oh boy. So I like it when light bleeds through the puppets, like these holes in the hair. I'm gonna cut out the upper eye, and because I want to add cellophane, I'm actually going to, weird as it sounds, cut out the eye here. So actually, keeping that in mind, we're just going to do the upper ridge of the eye. it will come together as I start cutting. And we shall see. Yeah. Oh boy, I chose an ambitious example to do. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I want to cut a puppet that I'm either going to use myself or that I can maybe share with a friend. So it feels like I'm not just doing it just for the sake of the video. I want to use this video to show a puppet that I would have made otherwise. And I did want to kind of treat my friend to this puppet because this is a character he just made. And as far as I'm concerned, he's been very humble but very proud about it. So, all right, let's get started. So the blue lines, again, is like essentially the minimum amount of detail we need so that when the light bleeds through the puppet, as you can see, I have taped my template to cardstock. So the light that bleeds through the cardstock should give us enough detail to see what we're looking at. So sometimes when I want the lines to be thin, I just go over the same spot again. Other times I'll kind of cut a sliver out. Curves. Sorry, my volume levels will probably fluctuate as I'm bending up and down to do this. So here's a small detail. Like the ear, I'll just go over it a few times rather than cutting out a sliver. And as we can see, just going over it a few times, it's going to already create the cut incision to let the light bleed through. So I did not say at the beginning of this video, these shadow puppets are specifically for overhead projectors. So very old school overhead projectors you might have seen in school before. I'm gonna check my music real quick. But whoa, music, how did you, this is an hour playlist. We're starting it over. I accidentally skipped to the end when I started. So these are for overhead projectors, which I don't think I'm that old, but I'm old enough that these are the kind of projectors we used when I was in school. So like the projectors oh no, this is not supposed to move that much. So here's where we use more tape. So overhead projectors, the ones I'm thinking of that I use, there's like the light board is on the bottom. You can use cellophane, see-through plastic to write and the projector projects that, or you could put paper down with essentially holes in it and the light will bleed through that. And it projects the light that bleeds through onto your wall. Or if you have a projection screen, I just use a wall because that's all that I got. I personally consider myself a tactile learner. Like I've learned there's tactile learning, there's visual learning, and there's audio learning. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people don't really either remember tactile learning's a thing or maybe even realize tactile learning is a thing, which is where like physical sensation, like using counting blocks, like using flashcards, like the tactile physical sensation of that style of learning helps your brain remember it versus other people having visuals, having like animations or like an not infomercial, like an informative like chart or something that helps them learn better. I feel like depending on the subject, like yes, animation, music, songs definitely all help. But I feel like for many things the tactile aspect of learning helps a lot. So I really miss that overhead projectors aren't really in schools very much anymore. Like I remember in math class, we would have like an acetane sheet, like a plastic sheet with problems printed on it. And then we would take turns going up to the projector and doing the work. So the class could see us doing our work And in a way, it was almost like we were teaching the class, but at the same time kind of doing the problems together as a class. I found it just a very effective way of learning for me personally. I feel like my math skills improved significantly with that teacher that I had who used the overhead projector. I feel very fortunate that I had him as a teacher. Because I think a lot of teachers, they forget tactile learning is a thing. Like, so many teachers don't use that method of teaching, and I feel like a lot of students kind of miss out not having that option, that it kind of gets reduced down to visual or audio learning, which definitely helps most students, but there's some students where that's not quite enough, unfortunately. So yes, there are still schools out there that have overhead projectors, but maybe don't use them very much. If you happen to work at a school, you can use an overhead projector for teaching, but even for art class, like, I'd like to think this style of puppetry could be a really fun art class and very time consuming, as you can see. If you want to keep the kiddos occupied, you can give them something a little more complicated to cut out or design. But also make sure they're old enough kiddos that they know how to safely use X-Acto knives. Okay, so let's flip it over to see what we're doing. So as you can see, our lines are starting to show through. These are the gaps in the hair that I want the light to bleed through. As we do more details, it will come together more. One moment, just remembered. I want to be chatty to occupy people watching. Just moving things aside. Every once in a while people use the chat, and I want to be able to respond when people do. I want to be chatty to keep people occupied as they watch, but I also get really focused on these details, so sometimes it's hard to speak at normal speed as I focus on not cutting myself as I get these details down. So again, often just repeating the same stroke is enough to get some light to bleed through, as I'm doing with a lot of these right now. But like more distinct features like the jawline, the head, I want that to be a little more pronounced. I'll cut thicker slivers. So I might actually do a sliver for the eyebrows. It's a strong feature of the face. It's very subtle, but I did cut a tiny sliver out there. And here, because I'm actually going to cut out the eye, I want to add acetane to give her green eyes. I'm just going to go over the upper ridge rather than cut a sliver, because now, okay, I want to, this is going to be a bit tricky. I want to keep the pupil as much as I can. I made it complicated for myself, but it's going to look real good, I think. All right. Alright, we almost got one eye. It's going to be a very thin layer of acetane. I keep saying acetane, acetone. Ay. We got it. We got it. Whew, okay. One more eye. Now we're going to get a little ridge in there for the pupil. Oh boy. I did this to myself, but I really want this detail. I just bought acetane recently, and it really adds more life to the figure, I think. It's like a really subtle touch that really makes the puppet pop out. Okay, so Let's flip this over. As we can see, here are our eyes. I'll cut out like really tiny pieces of acetane, and when I put it on the projector, it will give a little hint of green there. Okay. Like I'll probably have to touch up that earring a little later. Sometimes removing the template helps, but I can't remove it yet because I haven't done half these lines. So here's her collar now. No, wait, that was hair over her collar. I thought that was the collar of her sweater. Or blouse, rather. It's a long-sleeved blouse. Clean enough when I remove the blueprint. That will be our moment of truth. But I like the challenge of having more detailed puppets. It's really satisfying when you do puppets in this style. Like, I like the cutout puppets. Like, for more... Like, I've done puppets that are more like narrative pieces. For those, like, I definitely do it like stick puppet style. I feel like stick puppets just match the narrative style. It's also much faster and to an extent easier to make more of these. Like for a narrative style you need lots of puppets, so cutting out figures, it's faster and easier. Versus more like stylistic stuff, maybe like a transition or just like a more artsy piece. I like doing it like this, where I have the giant cardstock and I just let light bleed through the details. So, this is a much more time-consuming one, but I really like this style. And I haven't had the opportunity to do it as much, because when I have studied puppets in classes and such, most of our projects were a narrative style, so they were more like stick puppets in a way. And I really like that style too, but it's nice having an opportunity to focus on different types. There's lots of hair. I don't think I'm gonna cut that out to bleed. I think I'll just curve it. Now, so these lines being part of the body, I think I'm gonna cut more slivers style lines. Realize my fingers covering it a little. I'm trying to hold the paper down so it doesn't smush as I cut it. But we got a sliver here. Let's punch it out. Oh, that was a thick sliver, but that actually works really well. Because again, this isn't just a small detail of her many curly hair curls. This is part of the body, so we want that to stand out more. I would say this one too. So this will just do a small little line down, but this curve, again, it's the edge of the body. I want it to stand out a little more. And I apologize again if my voice is kind of strong at some points, weak at other. My mic is staying in the same position. I am kind of moving around my workspace to get a good angle to cut. Especially if you're using an X-Acto knife. Like, move yourself, move your paper as much as you need so you can get clean, safe cuts with your blade. I want to be safe with these things. Let's see. I think I'm going to make this a sliver, because again, it's the edges of her body. Let's make that another thick one. Hello, cord. Those are my headphones. I am listening to the music you're listening to through headphones. I really like doing art to jazz. I also just like jazz. Like, especially like quartet jazz, like kind of band style jazz. There's like, I think a lot of people associate jazz to like elevator music style jazz. I feel like there's also really lively jazz, like there's big band style jazz. And then whatever we're listening to now is just, I like doing art to it. Okay. I have not done this one yet. And let's see. I'm trying to decide which body lines to make thicker. I think I'll do this one thicker because, you know, the arm is a distinct feature. So I might not. Sometimes I make lines and then decide, you know what, I don't need to cut all of that. So we'll cut just this out. And now we'll do this one. I'm doing my best to show you guys what I'm doing. As much as I need to use my fingers for leverage and hold it down. Let's make this a strong one too. Let's flip it over. Hello, Cap. I wish I had a light board where I can just shine light from the bottom. The best we can do is see little gaps of green. If you happen to have a light board, that would be pretty awesome. Just put it over the light board and see the light bleed through. But I am flipping it back and forth just to get a sense. Okay, so this is her clothing. I think I'll actually make this a thinner line since she doesn't have clothing on this part. Oh boy, we're getting close to those fingers, which are going to be probably as complicated as the eyes were. Alright, let's finish the body before we get to the fingers. And I think we're more or less done. Let's take a look at that face real quick. I'm actually pretty satisfied. Again, I'll clean up some of these lines after stream just so I don't bore you guys. Any lines I hold up to the window where light doesn't bleed through, I'll just do a couple more strokes over to expand the lines. I'm pretty satisfied with this. Not bad. Alright, cool. So, as we can see though, so the face region is decent, but we haven't done this part of the puppet. So, it's a nice reminder to do these little lines. And this was an ambitious stream. I'll try to choose easier puppets in future. I also want to show how to do puppets with joints. So I didn't bring any with me, but just imagine this is a two-part puppet. Imagine there's like another stick here and there's a joint in the middle and I can wiggle it to add motion. And maybe next stream when I do puppets, I'll either do an easier puppet or I'll do something with the joint. Regardless, I'll make those two separate streams. I feel like joint puppets are their own can of worms. Not that they have to be complicated, but it's just something I'd rather focus on rather than have like a medley of a ton of things and then confuse people. But joint puppets are quite fun and pretty easy to make. And all you really need is like soft, pliable wire, something to cut it with. Like I have pliers that happen to have a little knob that clamps down and cuts the wire, but maybe a good pair of scissors is sufficient. Alright, let's finish some of the body lines. So as much as this is paper, X-Acto knives, I mean, you can see they're very thin knives. Like, we are just cutting paper, but keep in mind, if you're having trouble cutting, it might be worth replacing the blade. So don't be deceived by how soft and friendly paper is. It wears down on the blade over time. Alright, almost there. So like the mole on her face, for the buttons, I'm just gonna spin my blade. Spin, 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 spin. Just enough to poke a hole for the light to bleed through. And again, we spin, spin for the buttons. Alright. So, let's see. I'm gonna make this a sliver. This is the top of her blouse. Yeah. Now what I think I'll do is I'll have like a sliver at the start and then kind of peter it out. Sliver, peter out. More or less did the trick. All right. I really like this little curve right there. Really shows the fabric, that there's like a fabric pinch. Let's scoop this up, doing the creases on the skirt. Oh man, we are so close to the end. We just got those hands, which ambitious me wants to add green acetane to complement the green eyes. We'll see if I change my mind. I think I'll manage. Knock on wood. Don't want to jinx myself. All right, let's get these bracelets. Again, small details like this, you really don't want to cut all the way across and risk cutting just a giant hole on accident. But it takes practice. Like, if that happens as you make your puppets, it's a good learning experience. It teaches you to minimize the lines that are the most important. It makes you better remember what lines are connected. It kind of trains your eyes to see, like, okay, what lines are connected? What lines do I not want to cut all the way because they're connected? So her hands might look kind of funky, but that might actually work for her. So this character, I told my friend, I'm like, ooh, I really like her design. Like she seems like she'd be a really cool person. And my friend's like, she's actually kind of a terrible person, but is really good at putting on a good facade. So I feel like I'm not too concerned if her hands look funky. I don't know, in a symbolic way. Maybe it's like a highlight of how she puts on a good face, but she can be a rather manipulative character, which I think is what makes her so interesting, though. Alright. Yep, I'm ambitious. I'm gonna cut out these nails and put acetane over them because I want them to be green and complement the eyes. So this is tricky. These are very close to each other. We gotta leave a little gap between them. Alright, 2 more. We're so close. Okay. Alright, if you want to get closer. One more. Okay. There we go. Alright, I might actually have gotten all the lines now. Like, my last steps might just be the acetane and the cleaning up. Yo, I'm actually really satisfied with the way the hand came out. Like, this gap kind of emphasizes that the hand is curving. Huh. I am quite satisfied. Okay, we're gonna remove this then. I think I got all the lines. At least all the ones I wanted. Again, you want to be very minimalistic. But if there's some gaps, I mean, don't be afraid to flourish it a little bit. Let's get that piece out. Haha. There we go. It's gonna look more impressive when I put it on the projector, and I will, on my Twitter, I'll post what it looks like in its final stages. That's supposed to come out right? Sure, yes. Okay. We'll end in just a moment. I'm just going to grab some acetane just to give a hint of what it will look like. Very staticky. Oh man, acetane really likes to stick to itself. Alright, so what I'm gonna do, let me just grab my scissors. Oh, they were not as far away as I thought they were. They were really close actually. So this is such a small puppet. I just cut this itty bitty piece of acetane right here. I might even make it smaller on one side of the puppet. Actually, it doesn't matter what side it goes on because the projector, again, only bleeds through where you cut. So I can paste it like that. She kind of looks like a cyborg, but when I put it on the projector, it's just gonna look like green eyes. And again, I'll do the same down here. I'll cut out little slivers. Maybe even just like cut out a line of acetane like right here. I cut this out, just plaster it over these gaps, and it will only show through the gaps that it's covering. And we shall have green nails. So look forward to the final product on the Twitter, where, God, she looks like a cyborg, where it will have green eyes, green nails, and you will see what it looks like projected, again on a overhead old school projector. So these might work on other similar projectors. I don't know how, I've only ever used the old school kind. But whether this is a project you do at home or at school or, I don't know, an after school program, it's a pretty fun, pretty cheap project. Like, you just need cardstock, X-Acto knives, maybe scissors. If you want to do something a little more basic, like cutting out a rabbit, you got a rabbit. You could use paper, you could even use like old, what's it called, cereal boxes. It's a little thicker than paper, but if you're using scissors, it works fine. And if you're doing little storytelling versions, storytelling puppets, you just put these on a stick, and you can hop them around your screen. They're really fun to do. Alright, I hope these are popular enough. I would love to do more of these. I'll probably do more of these anyway, just because I like making puppets. So I hope you look forward to those. And with that, we are finished with this